The U.S. Navy is the largest navy in the world, holding roughly 430 warships in active service. It has a history going all the way back to October 13th, 1775. Many have served and died at sea while on board its many vessels, some to combat and some to accidents. A sailor, after checking in on board, quickly is taught that their true enemy is not the ship firing missiles at them. It is the ship itself. There is always risk of fire breaking out, coupled with heavy equipment that is extremely dangerous to handle, or the many shipboard evolutions involved with maintaining the vessel, such as dropping an anchor or even refueling at sea. Many sailors lose their lives while serving on board these mighty vessels. Yet sometimes duty does not end in death. It only continues. Welcome to Innocence Unknown. Commissioned on June 8, 1996, the USS Cole, DDG-67, has had many successful deployments and is still in service today, despite a tragic and dark history. On October 12, 2000, while at Anchorage off the coast of Yemen, 2 Al-Qaeda suicide bombers attacked the ship, right around the time when the sailors were in line waiting to have early chow. Just before time to change over the watch, an explosion erupted, killing 17 sailors and injuring 39. The crew's responses and actions kept her afloat and was brought home, where she was patched up and put back in service. Along the mess decks today sits the Hall of Heroes, to honor those who passed, but plenty will say they still serve. When I was in the Navy, I served on board a ship called the USS Cole. In the year 2000, we were in a port called Aden in Yemen. We are attacked by terrorists, which killed 17 sailors. They drove a small boat full of explosives into the side of our ship. We were taken to Pascagoula, Mississippi, where we underwent major repair. I went on deployment following the September 2000 attacks on 9/11 and returned to the Cole for her maiden deployment to the Mediterranean Sea in 2003. During that deployment, a lot of weird things happened on board the ship. My friend Brandon and I were walking down the side of the ship at 2 a.m. and the red lights were on. These lights are dim, so we remain undetected while at sea. Brandon was smoking a cigarette, and as we walked, someone had asked, "Hey man, you got another cigarette?" And he said no. We kept walking. The person then asked again, and Brandon replied no. On the third time, the person asked, and Brandon and I turned around, and there was no one to be found. One night, I was sleeping in my bed with the curtains closed, and some asked me why I was sleeping in their bed. And when I opened the curtains, there was no one there. I had told someone and what had happened, and he asked me what bed was I sleeping in. I told him, and then we went to my bed where my name was taped onto the side of the bed. When I had peeled it back, it revealed that it was one of the fallen 17 people. There was always strange things happening on the boat, from white ghosts standing watch on the flight deck, only to be seen in infrared cameras, to hearing people talking in the engine rooms, only to find nothing there at all. I was not a believer of ghosts until all this had occurred. Needless to say, now I am a believer. Posted by James Danielle. In the engineering space where the ship was hit, if you are working alone, your tools will be moved on you, and you can feel a presence of someone watching you. In the Hall of Heroes by the mess decks, you can hear your name being called by an unseen woman. The ghosts just want to let people know they are watching us. LPH-2 Iwo Jima. An amphibious assault vessel. She was commissioned in 1961 on August 26th. She served during Vietnam, Desert Shield, and even Desert Storm. Also even recovered the Apollo 13. She proudly served until July 14th, 1993. On October of 1990, there was a boiler accident which killed 10 of her crew just minutes after leaving the port of Manama, Bahrain. A high-pressured steam line burst, dousing the sailors in 850-degree liquid and vapor. My orders to go to the ship came right after the accident to replace one of the dead. When I arrived on board, nearly a month later, some of the guys were still screaming in their sleep from the nightmares. They were sent into the fire room, aka boiler room, to retrieve the bodies of their friends and co-workers, who were now steam cooked and their skin melting off their bodies. We were all kept very busy making repairs to get the ship running to participate in Desert Shield. When underway, the ship is very loud, with lots of vibrations all over. We were kept busy with the usual at-sea drills work, and actual general quarters like missile inbound and going through a floating minefield. When we returned to Norfolk, Virginia, we shut down the boilers and engines. As the engine and fire room cooled, we heard the usual noises of popping and groaning of the metal shrinking as it cooled from well over 100 degrees down to the 50s and 60s. There were some things we couldn't explain, moving shadow images, sounds of boots on the deck plates, and hammering. A BT, boiler tech, came running in the engine room asking me to go with him. He then asked me if I too hear the hammering. I said I did, and that it was just the steam going through the pipes, something we call water hammer. Problem was, there was no steam going through the boiler room at the time. If you walk across unfastened deck plates, it eventually will rock back to its original position. Sometimes right away, sometimes a little later. While in Shaft Alley, I heard the sound of someone skipping the last 2 rungs of the ladder and start walking towards me. I turned to say something to the roving security watch, but there was no one there. We came to accept that these were the crew members who were killed and just accepted their presence. We had a new guy come on board who firmly believed there was no such thing as ghosts. One night while on engine room cold iron watch, he was later found on the pier in a fetal position, shaking and crying his eyes out. It took 30 days in a mental hospital before he would set foot on the ship. He didn't want to talk about it. All he would say is he now believed in ghosts. CV-12 USS Hornet was an aircraft carrier that served from 1943 to 1970, and to this day sits as a museum in Alameda, California. She served in World War II, Vietnam, and even recovered the Apollos 11 and 12. She has a tremendous history of her service, and it seems many of her crew never left. With a history as long as hers, she is bound to have seen many tragedies and accidents on board, not to mention sailors become very attached to the vessels they served on, as they tend to represent some of the best times of their lives. One can't even imagine how they would return once their lives came to a close. Known for being so haunted that even the ghost hunters and Ghost Adventures crews paid her a visit. here are a few tales from those who've had unexplained encounters while on board. This happened while I was serving as dockmaster at NAS Almeida. I was a BM1 at the time. It's been over 10 years from the last time I was on the USS Hornet. After my last dead stick of the Hornet to Pier 1, I was so upset that I played sick the next 2 moves. Only just now do I tell my story, as I have seen others come out with sightings, and I don't feel so much like a fool anymore. Anyhow, here is my story. 1995 or 96, I'm not sure which. We had a lot of ship traffic coming in and out of Almeida. The Lincoln had just left, and they wanted to get the Hornet over to Pier 1 for some reason or another. I always hated dead sticking the Hornet. It moved like a cow. It took all day, and I always got assigned the forecastle. At the time I was a BM1, the forecastle was always hot during the summer, and no power made it just that much more interesting. Well, we cast off the lines and the tugs pulled us off the pier. I had 2 line handlers with me, and the transit from one pier to the next was likely to take an hour or so. They wanted to go up and check out the flight deck. I told them no problem, but get the mooring lines ready to run first. They went ahead and laid out the line and tied the heaving line to the eye. The heaving line was up on deck, and the bitter end was passed through the chock. They left and closed the quick-acting watertight door behind them. I was sitting by myself when I noticed that the mooring line was passed through the bitts in the wrong direction. I mumbled out loud, "That ain't going to work." And I froze as I heard a voice behind me say, "That isn't right." I turned around and didn't see anyone. I walked to the forward part of the room and checked the watertight door. It was chained shut. I shook it off and went back to the line. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone walking by the capstan. I turned and figuring it was a line handler. He was wearing dungarees. I asked him if he had said something. He didn't even look at me and bent over looking at something. At that moment, something caught my eye and I blinked. When I looked back, the sailor was nowhere to be found. I opened the quick 1, 2, 3, 4. I opened the quick-acting watertight door and went into the hallway. I was scared. I waited till the line handlers came back, then went back in with them. I never told them. I didn't want to be figured as one of those ghost kooks. Anyhow, I saw a TV special on ghosts on the Hornet, and they mentioned activity in the forecastle area, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to finally tell my experience. Things I know for a fact. I was the only one in the forecastle at that time. My line handlers had shut the quick-acting watertight door, and there is no way anyone could have opened it without me hearing it, and all other doors were chained or locked shut. BM1 Surface Warfare Qualified, Chris Bartlett, U.S. Navy retired. I was on the Girl Scout junior crew member sleepover along with Rebecca, her mom, and my mom. I thought it would be a normal. I was wrong. I had just turned out my reading light. I will tell you now. I was on the 3rd bunk, and nobody was sleeping under me. Rebecca was sleeping beside me, but nobody was under me. Back to the story. The light was off, and I tried to go to sleep. I felt 3 pushes below me, like I was being woken up. So I got up. I looked around. I saw a white light in the corner and saw 2 sailor ghosts. One said to the other, "Watch that one." First I pinched myself, hurt. Unfortunately, I was the only one awake, so nobody else saw. Julia. My first day as a crew member was January 8th, 2005. I'm with the live aboard, and I heard some stories. You know, like why we're all afraid to go to the brig by ourselves or at night. and I was staying in JOB. I heard stories of Bunk 13. I think it was Winter told me that one. She also told me about the guy she nicknamed Flyboy. He haunts the area around JOB and opens and slams hatches and talks and laughs. He's like one of the good old boys who hang around and watch out for us. But that night I was in bed, and I know we had dogged the hatches into the hangar and the forecastle. But I clearly heard the hatch open, slam, and then we heard footsteps all the way to the hangar. Then we heard the hatch open, shut, and we heard it being dogged down. That happened about 3 times. After that, I kinda got angry because I wanted to sleep. So I went into the hall, said, "Hey, Flyboy, keep it down." I was scared, but after that, he came through again, but left the hatches open. Ryan Garrett. On the same night as my first encounter, I also came across this one. We went down to breakfast, and the crew was eating. We had a group of Girl Scouts, and we heard this banging. The girls in E section were scared out of their wits. Zora went down, or up, I should say, and we were joking around, and she radioed that a 300-pound locker started rocking by itself and scooted 2 feet forward. Now I was early, and so we were messing around. So someone radioed to E section to rock it back, or asked the ghost to do it. I'm still not sure how a locker that size managed to move that much by itself. Ryan Garrett. I want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope it was enjoyable to listen to. I dedicated this video to all my military brothers and sisters out there that gave the ultimate sacrifice in service to their country. You are never forgotten, and thank you for your service.